Welcome back to TNLP, the newsletter podcast, brought to you by the HazMat Guys. Timmy here with this week's latest hazmat news and happenings. But before we start, did you know the HazMat Guys produce even more than just TNLP on top of Bobby and Mike's flagship show? Get into shows like Hazard Class with Jake Ricks and the Industrial Strength podcast. Head to thehazmatguys.com to get started. Anywho, we'll start things off with a developing story out of Woods Cross, Utah, where the Gebhardt Daily Staff reports South Davis Metro fire crews responded to a possible grass fire on Monday, July 21st at about 10 a.m. and found something else. On arrival, they found it was actually a commercial structure fire that had been put out with extinguishers by bystanders. Crews encountered an individual working in the business with burns over a significant portion of their body, says a news release issued by South Davis Metro Fire. The fire involved some hazardous materials, so the individual was rapidly decontaminated by crews and transported to the U of U burn center in serious condition. The cause of the fire is not yet known, the release says, and is still being investigated by our fire investigation team with our hazmat team on scene as support. We'll keep an eye on this one and report back if we hear what the hazardous material is identified as. Next up, we head to Trinity Pines, California, where journalist Kim Kemp independently reports our next story. On Sunday, July 20th, a pickup truck crashed into Cold Creek off State Route 3 near Trinity Pines Drive, triggering a multi-agency response that included search and rescue divers, hazmat notifications, and a fuel spill into the waterway. The incident occurred around 5:37 p.m., just south of Trinity Pines Drive in Trinity County. According to the California Highway Patrol Traffic Incident Information page, the vehicle rolled off the road and into the river. Emergency responders initially weren't sure if the occupants were still in the water and requested divers from Trinity County search and rescue. One person was reported to have injuries to the face and was transported by private vehicle to Mercy Medical Center. Family reports there was only one person in the vehicle, but search and rescue is continuing to the scene. The vehicle was later recovered by Weeby Towing, and responders estimated that up to 30 gallons of fuel had spilled into Cold Creek during the crash. The Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, assigned Hazmat Spill Control Number 253596 to the rollover of a 2005 Toyota pickup. Absorbents and booms were deployed, but officials noted that it remained unknown whether the spill had been stopped or contained. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife was contacted due to the fuel entering the creek, and several state and federal environmental agencies were notified. Local law enforcement and fire were also on scene. This incident sounds familiar, kind of like one right out of Nerd 2. Was it Drill 27? Boom placements across streams? Someone check my math on that one. Wrapping up this week, a topic we see so frequently in these summer months. This time, the Millville Community Pool was closed through the weekend after a chlorine leak. Reporters Mackenzie Ocker and Aditya Iyer of 16 WNEP News tell us it was just before 10 a.m. when the Millville Community Pool was about to open. A borough maintenance employee and a volunteer firefighter at the Millville Community Fire Company went into the chemical room to check on a chlorine pump that's been having mechanical issues for a week. He immediately recognized an odor and saw an active leak of liquid chlorine in that room, that there was a hazardous materials incident involving liquid chlorine that was mixing with another dry material believed to be soda ash, said Fire Chief Jeremy Reese, Millville Community Fire Company. Approximately 10 gallons of liquid chlorine leaked. The borough employee left the chemical room, telling pool employees to also leave. Two Millville Community Fire Company firefighters entered the chemical room wearing personal protective equipment and respiratory protection, shutting the pump off and somewhat containing the leak using other hazardous materials tools. We consulted with Columbia County Emergency Management, who has called a contracted cleanup firm along with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, said Chief Reese. Emergency responders say they followed the appropriate response guidelines due to the chemicals involved. We did evacuate approximately 100 residents within about a 350-foot perimeter in all directions from the swimming pool. There were no injuries to any firefighting staff. There were no injuries to any residents in the area. No residents in the area were exposed to these fumes. Nobody at the pool was exposed to these fumes, explained Chief Reese. Firefighters sent residents in the area to different locations, including nearby churches and the Millville Community Fire Company fire station. Employees and students at summer programs were also forced from the Millville area high school and the elementary schools. Those residents were away from their homes for more than 5.5 hours and were not allowed to return until first responders cleared them. I'm not particularly keen on something like that happening right in my backyard, but they know what they're doing. It's a swimming pool. It's nice for the guys to have, said Ron Summers of Millville. Alice and Deal's grandmothers went to the fire hall. Both of my grandmothers live next door. They're 90 and 93, and we're so grateful our local fire department is wonderful. They came and picked them up from their houses and took them to safety. Casey Jordan was not at home when the evacuation order went through. Her dogs were still at home while the pool's leak was being dealt with. I was really worried about my dogs, yeah, honestly, but everything worked out fine. They're fine. I'm just glad that everything was taken care of and nobody was hurt, said Jordan. Despite 100 people having to stay away from their homes, and the residents we spoke to share a similar sentiment about the Millville Fire Company. Obviously, you never want something like this to happen, but they took care of it. No one was hurt. So we're really grateful for that, said Deal. The Little Fishing Creek area swimming pool will remain closed this weekend. There is no word yet on when it will reopen. We talk about it for a reason. Make sure you're prepared for incidents like this, even if it's just refreshing your memory by visiting the HazMat Guys' episode archives that cover chlorine incidents just like this one. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Newsletter Podcast, brought to you by the HazMat Guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the weekly newsletter at thehazmatguys.com for links to TNLP and other hazmat nuggets. That's all for this week. Reminder to snag your spot for the Southernmost Hazmat Conference while you can. You know how many hazmat techs want to go to the Keys in February? Enough that space is running out. Quick. See you on the beach. Timmy, over and out.